Hi, my name is Sarah Fitch. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and mental health clinician at Stockton Unified School District. So today I want to talk to you about grief and loss and how to have these conversations with children. So by the end of the presentation, I just want to offer some information to make you a little bit more comfortable to have these conversations and just kind of provide you some information that's relevant to right now and relevant to kiddos that experience grief and loss. So let's get started. So first, I like to start out with the stages of grief. So the first is denial. There tends to be almost like a shock in the child's behavior, like disbelief, right? So they don't really know if this is true. They're not really sure. It's really difficult for them to process. We may experience avoidance at this stage as well. And just a lot of confusion. Is this really happening? And potentially some fear in this stage as well. So for anger, frustration, irritability, and even some anxious behaviors occur in this stage. So maybe they're a little bit shorter with you, and that's not really their normal personality. And so just really having a hard time in this stage being able to regulate their irritability and their mood, their overall mood. So for bargaining, this is when we typically see the what if question. So, or if I only did, right? If I only did this, or if I only behaved this way, or if I only acted like this. So sometimes in the bargaining stage, we can really take on this personal role that we may have had in what happened. So this can be a really interesting stage because the youth tends to be struggling to kind of find meaning. This is the detective stage. So they really want to try to figure out why this happened, what happened, all of the details. And sometimes, to be quite honest, we don't have the details. So this can be really frustrating on the caregiver's part, but also really frustrating for the youth as well in not having some of the answers that they're looking for. Depression. So depression is similar to anger, and that it could be a personality shift that we're not used to seeing in this youth. So helplessness, this is actually typically what people think about when we talk about grief and loss, is they think about the depressive stage. So what does that look like for youth? This can be a really low mood, feelings of being overwhelmed, shut down, flight mode. So really not having a lot of motivation when maybe typically they were doing wonderful in school and now they're not interested in school, or maybe they're doing great in community activity or community sport, and now they don't even want to show up, right? So we're really noticing this low mood, low energy, lack of motivation, and truly feelings of helplessness for this youth. And then the fifth stage is acceptance. So this is exploring other options, creating a plan, attempting to move forward. So this is really when we start to see that healing. So for a lot of kiddos, what we see is kind of these waves of different emotions. So we could see a really big high, like they have a great memory and they're laughing and they're having a good time. And then we see a really low low, right? And a really big high and a really low low. So it seems very out of control. So by the time that we reach the acceptance stage, there's a little bit more direction, there's a little bit more focus. It doesn't seem to be so high and low, so black and white. It seems to be a little bit more regulated, which tells us that they might be closer to that baseline behavior. But another thing before we get out of the stages of grief is to also understand that these stages are not in order. So once we see that anger stage, we're gonna go, oh, good, bargaining's next week, right? These are not in order. So typically, especially with the youth, they can go in and out of the stages and also repeat stages as well. So we wish it was as simple as, oh, we're on the fourth stage, we're close to the fifth stage. Unfortunately, that's just not how grief works. Another thing to know is that everyone kind of goes through these stages at different times. I know I use the example of a week. These could take months, several months, depending on the impact of the grief and loss that was that the youth experienced. It could be months, it could be years. There's really no right answer for how long that these stages last. All right, so this is a really good tool in helping children to explore their grief. And this can be quite simple for someone that's a caregiver and used to this kiddo, because you are the expert on this child. You spend a lot of time with this child, so you're going to know a lot of things, and you're going to see a lot of things that maybe teachers and community members that see this youth don't see or don't pay attention to in the way that you do. So I really want you to trust your gut and trust that you are confident in knowing this youth and noticing some of these shifts that are going on for this child. So what does that mean? Paying attention to differences or shifts. So body language. We do communicate 70% by body language, which is astounding to me. And so if we're noticing shifts in body language for the youth, that may be something that may be a little bit of a red flag or a warning for us to try to promote that conversation, and to just try to get that youth to kind of open up to us a little bit. Another thing is personality changes. As I talked about before in the depressive state, is personalities can change. So where they used to be really laid back, now they they want that routine. And other personality changes could be that they typically get along with a lot of people, and now we're getting reports that they are having a lot of disagreements with peers, right? So these are great examples of personality changes that you could see and notice and just take note of and see, okay, what does this youth need? So another great tool is to just offer time and space to talk. I know we have busy schedules. I know that there's a lot going on, but really being available for that youth can be less isolating for the child, and really offering a safe space and a listening ear. So what does that mean? Safe space, listening ear. What do these things mean? So really, what's important is not to judge what they're saying, what their thoughts are, what their feelings are, right? No, you don't feel that. No, that's not going on, right? We really don't want to dismiss what they're telling us, because it is quite a gift that they are opening up to us, really, especially at some ages. Another thing is when they're telling us and they just need to talk, we don't want to insert our problem-solving brain. We really just want to be that listening ear for them, and let them get this off their chest, and just give them that space, right? Another thing is to recognize and normalize feelings and behaviors. So with grief and loss, sometimes we're experiencing grief and loss at the same time, right? So with grief and loss, it can really range on what that looks like. It could be, their best friend moving away. It could be a family member died, something like that. And so with each incident, it's going to look different, but we can really sort of join the youth in this experience, especially if we're feeling it ourselves. So we can reflect and say, you're really feeling sad right now. I can see it in your body. I can see it, in your shoulders. I can see it, those type of stuff. Or I'm noticing that you are kind of changing in some ways. And I just wanted to kind of talk to you about that. And then, of course, when I feel this way, when I feel really sad, I really like to listen to music, or I really like to go for a walk. And so just kind of inviting them into that experience, and letting them know that they're not the only ones, right? And then, of course, we can get to a point in the conversation where we can discuss or brainstorm some coping skills with the youth. So coping skills is just another word for something that you can do that's healthy, that can distract or can help you process through the situation that you're going through. And so what does that look like? Actually, we're going to talk about it in just a moment. So coping skills. So we have this great tool called Accepts that is a really good range of different coping skills that you can utilize and suggest for the kid that might be really helpful. So activities. Activities is do something. Call, text, visit a friend, right? Watch a movie, a TV show, cook or bake, play a game, right? So some of these activities may be modified for the age group. You know, cooking and baking may be only available when there is a parent present or when there's an adult present. Watching a movie or TV show, that might be something that's limited depending on the rules of your household. And so just doing something can really help get ourselves out of that isolated you know, feelings that we're having, get us out of our room, not taking naps just because we're sad, those type of things. And to be honest, if we look at this from a perspective of adults, we do this all the time, right? I'm sure that there's something that you do that's really helpful to get you to not think about something stressful, something that makes you sad, something that makes you angry, those type of stuff. We do it all the time, and most of the time we don't even realize we're doing it for that reason, but we just know that it helps and it helps our body. So another thing is contributing. So contributing to do something nice for someone else. This could be helping with homework with a sibling. This could be helping a friend. This could be making something nice for someone. I've had kids make letters of appreciation to people and donating things, volunteering. These are all really feel-good moments because one, it gives you the sense of accomplishment. You were able to do something while also giving you, you know, a little bit more of a connection with that other person. So if they're helping a sibling with homework, you know, and maybe this is typically a relationship where they're fighting all the time. Wow, we just created a different dynamic with our sibling, and that's a really big deal. So another one is comparison. So compare yourselves to those less fortunate or how others would cope in a similar situation. So the reason I have this one on here is I don't want to take away from the experience of the child, but sometimes comparing ourselves to something worse may help us to shift our perspective of what's going on for us. So that can be helpful. But really why I put this on here is because how others would cope in a similar situation. Sometimes something is way too close to home. So if we say, you know, hey, what can you do for yourself? Because you're feeling sad, right? It's too difficult to come up with that. But what would you tell a friend? You know, what would you offer a friend if they were feeling sad or if they were feeling angry or if they were stressed about something, right? And maybe getting that a little bit less close to the person can help them to come up with and brainstorm some ideas for themselves. All right, so emotion. So create a different emotion. So what does that look like? This could be a little bit more specific to some of the skills that were in activities. So watch a funny show, watch a funny movie, listen to a soothing or upbeat music, you know, read funny jokes, etc. So this could be something really honing in on the youth's personality if they have a lot of humor typically and everything seems to be so serious. So creating a different emotion could just be exploring a different outlet that makes you laugh, that makes that kind of distracts you from that situation. A lot of kids, of course, they'll go on YouTube, look up YouTube videos as well. Pushing away. So push the painful situation out of your mind temporarily. This sounds like avoidance, and I understand that. What I want to explain in this situation is sometimes pushing the situation out of your mind temporarily looks like compartmentalizing. Again, something that we do as adults a lot of the times. If we have a big work meeting or we have something that's coming up and we cannot distract ourselves with this, we have to compartmentalize. We have to put that in our brain somewhere so that we can worry about it, stress about it at a later time. So what does that look like for kids? Well, sometimes it might be a little bit more tactile. So there's worry jars, there's worry stuffed animals. There's all sorts of different ways of doing this. So with that being said, we can set up a certain time after dinner, before dinner, during dinner, whatever that looks like for your family is when we're going to talk about this thing, right? But for right now, we're going to push that away. We're going to get through school. We're going to get through what we need to get through. And then we're going to talk about that as soon as that's done, so that at least the kid knows that there is a predictable time that they can talk about this situation. But for right now, we're going to distract ourselves in other ways so that we can use that time to that time that's allotted, that we give ourselves, to end up processing through it then. So we make sure that that other parent or that other person that they're going to talk to about it, it's available at that time as well. Also, it gives us a little bit more control. We're controlling that this is the time we're going to talk about it, not right now, which can be kind of empowering for a kid. All right, so thoughts, replacing your thoughts. This can be very difficult, but sometimes it's distraction. So sometimes it's counting something nearby, tiles, colors in a picture or poster, reading, complete a puzzle. So getting your thoughts away from what you're thinking about and onto something else. Another way of doing this is to challenge your thoughts, right? So if we're in that bargaining stage of what if I did this differently, maybe that person would still be here, is challenging those thoughts and not keeping it as personal to us, and challenging, going, wait a second, I did whatever I needed to do, and that doesn't really make sense. I can't really control if that happens, right? And so challenging the thoughts, replacing your thoughts with more comfortable feelings can be really helpful for the kiddo as well. And that's a pretty tough one. But I'm thinking that if they have a really safe person they can go to, that this is something that they can absolutely accomplish. Sensations. I love using this one. So sensations is intensifying sensations. This can be smells. Smells is a really good one. I like using lotions, sanitizers that smell really good. Oh man, all sorts of different things. So this can be a way to heighten a memory that was positive for the kid. So another way to do this is other sensations that we can think about is squeezing a stress ball. Or doing push-ups or sit-ups, using our body like that, petting your dog or your cat, right? Animals are great for this. In fact, there was a study that said that petting a puppy lowers your blood pressure. Who figured, right? Ice is a great tool as well. So holding the ice in your hand, chewing the ice, something like that. So just utilizing some of these sensations to distract and to create positive memories or experiences for yourself is really important. All right, so bibliotherapy, really big word for books that are helpful in certain categories. So in this category, we're talking about grief and loss. So most importantly, we want to talk about different age groups and what might be helpful. The Invisible String is one that I've heard for many, many years. This is an extremely popular book for therapists, teachers, parents. I've heard this in several different demographics that I've worked with. So this one is about children being connected to adults through an invisible string of love. So it's very appropriate for younger children and trying to describe loss to them and the fact that they're still connected to that person, even if they're not physically here. So this is a really sweet book, and definitely okay for the younger kiddos. After Zero. So this After Zero is going to be one that is appropriate for more middle school children and up. So please be aware of that. So this one, the main character is actually coping with anxiety that has progressed to mutism. So mutism is where they don't speak. And so anxiety, kids experience anxiety a lot of the time, right? So it could be situational anxiety, it could be, anxiety that, chronic anxiety, they've had it for a long time, that type of stuff. So this might be very relatable if you've got a youth that is experiencing anxiety after the loss that was had. So this may be very relatable to them. When someone very special dies is a very particular book, definitely appropriate for the younger kiddos, especially our artistic children. So if they're artistic and they like to do, coloring or activities and drawing and stuff like that, this is a great book for them. So this is an activity book that's for children and is kind of promotes them to process some of the emotions that they're feeling. So really great book that I recommend for the younger kiddos. Miss Bigsby's Last Day, very specific book. This is a book about a teacher that is dying. She's terminally ill, and she's going to pass away. And so this is very specific. So if this is something that a loss that you are experiencing in your family or a family friend or a friend, something like that, this might be appropriate for them. And I definitely recommend reading this before you give this to your child, just to make sure that that this is something that you feel like is appropriate for them. So When Dinosaurs Die and I Miss You, both very appropriate for the younger age group. The author is very specific about death and the permanency of death. So where Invisible String is very much like, oh, we're attached to this person, after they leave, after they're physically gone. When Dinosaurs Die and I Miss You, very specific to the permanency. So I really want to emphasize the importance of looking over these books before you give it to your children to make sure that they align with your spiritual and religious beliefs, so that you don't feel like you're giving this book and it's counteracting any of your family culture, because that's really important, that it aligns with that. So these are some great tools and resources that you can use. And Stockton Unified School District on our main page does have some resources for parents, some community therapy options as well that might be worth looking into as well. All right, so we have talked with the youth. We have been a safe person that they can talk to, yet we're still pretty concerned. Maybe that personality shift or change has lasted a little bit longer than we were expecting. We're really concerned. We're seeing some new behaviors that seem to be a little bit concerning for us. So here's some ideas. So we want to make sure that we're monitoring our child's social media so that we're not missing anything, right? So if we have access to the youth social media, we may have a better understanding of what's going on with them. I know that youth nowadays with YouTube and Instagram or whatever else, they may be sharing with their peers things that they're not really sharing with us. So one, it's a good idea just to kind of know what's going on in that arena, but also to make sure that they're being appropriate on these websites as well, and that kids are being appropriate with them as well, because always, we want to keep these children safe. So monitoring the child's social media is a really good first step in if we're concerned about this kid. Okay, another thing, just good practice to have is locking up sharps. So knives, razors, any potentially dangerous items. I put medications here because this is sometimes something that we forget about. And especially if we have any history of suicidal ideation or any history of attempting suicide, we want to make sure that all these things are not in reach of the child. So when we say lock up, sometimes we don't have the advantage of having a drawer that locks, or we just don't have the means to have something like this. So I did want to share with you that working with parents, I have recommended lock boxes. This is something you can get on Amazon, every shape, every size, every price you can think of, every type of style, where with combination or key, etc. And so, depending on what you need, you can find it at a pretty reasonable price typically, and you can even get lock boxes at Walmart as well. Ranging from about $20 to $30 for the lock box, depending on kind of again the style that you want, the size that you want, etc. And just really making sure that they do not have access to the key, they do not have access to the combination, they won't be able to figure out the combination. Otherwise, then it's just a box, right? And then keeping that somewhere that you, the parent, or you, the guardian, or you, the caregiver, only have access to. So typically that would be your room, your closet, somewhere up high, something like that. And so they're not going to be able to have access to it in case it's not locked, or in case we forget to do the combination, or whatever that looks like for you. Okay. And again, always a good idea to contact a mental health professional. I know within the school site, the school counselors are fantastic. They can be a really great resource for things that are available in the community, as well as things that are available on campus. And so contacting a mental health professional, either in the community or starting at the school site that your youth is at, can be a really great resource for you and can give you a little bit more guidance on things to do moving forward.